And I think the guardrails are going to come. I think the guardrails are going to come from the government. I think the nations are going to agree upon this. It's going to have to be agreed upon. If China wants to continue to press AI to the point where it's more intelligent than humans. All right, guys, welcome to the Let's Talk Buddy podcast. This is me, Patrick, and my brother Joshua. We're just going to have some deep conversations, some casual conversations. We don't have anything super planned other than the topic of AI. So wherever this takes us, whatever rabbit trail we go down, you guys can join us, talk in the comments down below. If you guys got opinions about things we're saying, we would love to hear them. I'm going to go through each one as much as I can, and I'm going to respond to you guys. So with that being said, Josh, let's talk about the topic of AI, and let's specifically talk about where do you think America is versus China currently in AI?
Yeah, so China released the Kimi K3 model recently, and it was eye-opening. So OpenAI and Claude and basically the different AI companies decided that they were going to start panic mode, and so you started seeing a pullback a little bit of open weights, and you started seeing some discussion of China passing the United States and like United States companies being scared and whatnot. But I mean, when you look at it, you look at how could China beat the United States? Right now, they don't have a dominance with chips. They don't have a dominance with anything outside of maybe energy. And we've seen where China is building huge energy reserves of like natural renewable like resources, and going that route along with kind of double dipping in oil and some of the other items there. So it's kind of I don't know. I mean, when you look at it, buddy, it's like, where is China ultimately going to land at? They're doing pretty good right now with their AI. They're not at the American, top right level, but they're very close.
And I should say that Josh has a master's in artificial intelligence, so he's got more knowledge than I do on this topic. I'm just a self-studied expert, and I say expert in quotes, right? Self-studied expert. I'm not by far any means an expert, but for me personally, I have studied this topic as well, and I think that China is definitely winning the AI race currently. But the thing about China is they're opening up AI to the public more accessible than America is. I think that's going to backfire on them. I don't know what Josh thinks about that, but I think that's going to backfire on them, because I think that when you give the American people more access to cheaper artificial intelligence, ultimately they're fighting with corporations. They're trying to attack us at the corporation level, but the people are going to benefit from this the most. So what do you think about that?
I think the people are going to benefit. The problem is that there could be a potential rug pull in the future, right? So China right now is saying, here's here's our models, here's our open weight models. Come use our models. Don't use the American models. Then everybody gets hooked on the Chinese drug, right? It's like a drug dealer when they give you a free sample, right? And then you go and you basically get pulled into the loop, right? Get pulled in, and then you can't get out of it, right? So China's going to, basically pull us into that eventually as a society, as a world, if we're not careful. So they don't have good intentions, in my opinion. I think that their intentions are definitely, one way, right? They want to dominate the market, and then they want to rug pull. They basically want to say, all right, now that you're all using our models, now it's time for us to start putting a clamp down on some of this. Now come and use our models now that OpenAI and Claude and all our competitors are out of the market.
Yeah,
So
that pressure they're putting on the corporate, OpenAI and these other companies, is the pressure they're putting on them, though, is going to benefit us in the long run. That's what I believe, because I think that when you do that, of course, corporate America is not hurting for money, right? They're not hurting for money. This ain't going to do nothing to them ultimately. They'll recover somehow, some way. They'll find their way to make money. But the thing is, people, smaller businesses, even businesses that aren't small, bigger businesses are going to benefit from this overall financially. I think that we're going to ultimately benefit from this, and the corporations take a hit, but not the people. And then when the people can grow and and catch up to base, because here's the thing: when China opens up this can of worms fully. Let's say AI in the next year is at a point where it's so good at coding that it's just creating software without any issues. You don't even barely need any more QA. I mean, of course, you're always going to need some kind of QA. You're always going to need somebody kind of testing it, making sure it runs good. But minimizing that, right? So the thing is, with China doing that, when they open up that can of worms, America is going to be able to catch up because the people are going to catch up. We're going to be able to get to that level because of that. So what do you think about that?
Well, I think having open models, open weight models is a good thing. My concern is not on having the open models necessarily. It's the what do people do with the open models, right? Open weight models specifically, right? Like
Right.
me and you talked about, off of this podcast before, right? About how you can run something locally, you can pull down these models, and even on like gaming computers, you can run a simple chat bot and it do a lot of stuff for you already, right? 2 years ago, that type of stuff was not really feasible, right? The models were not really efficient. They had many issues with them. Now it's become even better because all the models ahead of them that are the frontier models, your Claude, OpenAI, have gotten better, but China has copied a lot of those models and then taken those and created these open weights that now everybody can use. They are stealing that information. My concern is not the open side of it, it's the dangers that come with it, right?
Right.
Because if everybody has access to those models, then in theory, anybody, any actor in any nation could potentially take those and start using those for nefarious purposes, right? So, whether it's cyber attacks, trying to shut down power grids, I mean, all the way to like, Armageddon style attacks, right? Where they're trying to, hit people with, weapons and killing, whole countries and whatnot. So, again, that's my concern. Openness is one of my big things. Open source, open models. I mean, and anybody who's done any IT, it's always great, especially when you have like an open source tool or whatever that you're using that's available and has good documentation and they keep track of their security. But models are a little bit different, right? Because they can think for you, they can do things in an automated fashion. So that would definitely be a concern if you're going to go the route of saying like, let's just let everything be open and not we're not going to put guardrails on anything. We're just going to let it be open, right? I can see both sides of the argument because both sides present a danger.
Yeah. I think ultimately, like I said, I think it's going to be beneficial in the long run, but we'll have to wait and see. But where do you think um, we're going to stand by like 2030? Where do you think we're going to be at by 2030 with AI? Because I know there's a lot of opinions out there on, AGI and artificial intelligence, transcending the human intelligence and all that. So what do you think about that? Where are we going to be at 2030 with AI?
Oh man. Uh, so there was a recent, and I was reading it this morning. There was a recent study done by MIT, and they basically said that there was a 10% chance of catastrophic damage being created by 2030 from AI. And so, reading into it, their main concerns were the fact that you can't really put, particularly even if you put guardrails on it, that's not enough. And so, I think by 2030, if we keep at the pace we're going right now, I think you could see some major cyber attacks. I think you could see like whole bank systems, failing because people were, breaking through the, tokens, the encryption. They're going through and basically gathering up information. We just saw an AI model, I believe it was Open AI model, if I'm not mistaken, go through and break into I believe it was Hugging Face.
Hmm.
And so they went into Hugging Face and basically found a way into that system. And Hugging Face was using their own version of an AI model to go through the logs and see was there any break-ins, any potential harm. And it missed this. It got into the system, and by the time it realized it was too late. Mainly because they don't have their own like model like Claude or OpenAI or whatnot. But that type of danger is scary. I mentioned it with the open stuff. It doesn't even take the open stuff at this point, right? Like if nation states still created their own closed versions of these models, they could still, in theory, do their own thing and whatnot. So by 2030, I honestly think you're going to see AI. I don't believe in AGI. Like I don't. I don't think we're going to reach AGI with LLMs. There's a mathematician named is it Matthew LeCun, or I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but he basically stresses that he doesn't believe mathematically it's possible to create AGI and like super intelligence. I believe it's ASI, like artificial super intelligence. He doesn't believe you can get to that point,
Right.
like to that level, without needing like a vast number of resources.
Yeah,
So
there's no way. Yeah, I
yeah,
think ultimately, buddy, by 2030, I think we're gonna see definitely an increase in how intelligent the AI is. I think we're gonna see more people using it, which is also going to increase the models and the training of the models, and it's going to play a big part in the models, getting more intelligent. But ultimately, by 2030, it's just going to be like it is right now. It's going to be a partner. It's going to take jobs. I do think it's going to take jobs, but I don't think it's going to take jobs on the level like they're expecting. Like they're expecting it to take, and not saying them, but there are experts out there that are literally thinking that this is going to be the end of the world by 2035 or something crazy like that. But I think it's going to hurt America because America is already bleeding economically. But ultimately, if we can get it to a place where it's just a partner to the person, it's going to actually add jobs as well. So if it adds jobs in the long run, yes, it's going to take jobs, but if it adds jobs in the long run to replace some of the jobs it takes, it's not a big of a blow. And also, it's going to make our not only our economy but our nation more. Just like when the internet came out, the technology increased. The people were able to do way more than what they were capable of doing in the 70s. Whenever the technology came in the 90s and early 2000s, and the internet started to boom. So the same thing now. Where I think it's as impactful, buddy, as electricity or the invention of fire. AI is going to be the next thing that takes us to the next level, but I don't think it's going to replace humans. I don't think we're going to ever have to worry about that. But what do you think?
yeah. By 2030, I do think that you're going to see massive job loss. I think that the number one issue outside of security is jobs,
Yeah.
right? So if you look at China, China has a strong social safety net, right? If you lose your job, you get this amount of money, you get this, we'll help you on your feet, we'll take care of you food wise, don't worry about these things. So they're embracing it, right? If you look at their poll numbers, they're really high, even from like outside polling that they do, stating that they're all in for AI. You look at the numbers in the United States, and it is a vast majority against AI in general, right? They don't want data centers. They don't see a positive outcome in the future from AI. Complete polar opposites there. And it's because in America, there's not always a strong social safety net. There's a lot of different states that do certain things. So, I think the countries that have strong social safety nets, the countries that react quickly to the job loss, will be the ones that end up winning in the end, right? They'll be the ones that can withstand all the different changes. And if it does take jobs, let's say like Elon Musk is right, right? He's saying that money won't even matter by 2036, right? Like he won't even care about money by 2036. Cool, right? That's fine. But in America, money rules the day. So what's going to change in America if that does happen, right?
Mm.
Because you don't want to end up in a Detroit becoming human, situation like that video game where you got a huge population that's unemployed, right? And
Yeah.
they're not, working, and now they're really pissed off at your robots, your AI, or whatever else comes along the way. So, yeah, again, by
I think all
2034,
that's
I think
I think
that's
all that's possible, buddy, to a degree. Like, especially with that video game. I don't think we'll ever have to worry about that. And that's just obviously my opinion because I think that artificial intelligence will peak and it's going to peak hard when it peaks. And I think that, and I'm saying that because we already can see it. Well, I wouldn't say it's peaked, obviously, but it is slowing down. There was a drastic increase from when it was released to now. I mean, in 2026 with it now, what it was back in like what 2021, 2022, 2023, you saw
oh
them giant leaps. You saw big leaps.
yeah,
I mean, there's that famous video going around where Will Smith's eating the spaghetti, right? And Will
oh
Smith,
yeah,
they show the video from like 2021 or whatever it was, and he looks like a mashed up cartoon. It doesn't even look right. And now you look at it and it looks like it's Will Smith eating spaghetti, right? That level of jump, I think, is the highest
yeah.
level of jump you're going to see with AI. I don't see it getting anywhere past. that point. Like I think in 2030, we're going to be sitting in our rooms still using AI like we do today, Chat GPT and Google Gemini and whatever you use. And you're going to sit there and you're like, wow, this thing's much faster than it used to be, but it's not really that big of a jump. It's not really doing much more than what it used to. So ultimately, I think that the jump from now to 2030 is nowhere near what some of the experts are suggesting based off of the fact that it's already slowing down now.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, uh, I disagree a little bit, right? So let's say that it keeps going at the pace it's going right now. The models themselves are not increasing as drastic. I agree with that, right? If you
Right.
go back and you went from like 2021 to 2023, 2023 to 2025, and then to this year, the jumps are a little bit less, right? But I think there's more of a focus on the agentic side of things and agentic workflows, and those help the models, right? They don't necessarily need the models to keep increasing at a really fast pace, making massive jumps, because you have multiple models now working as individual agents, right? And so they can take pieces of context and chew it out and
Right.
basically figure out what tasks they need to do. So as far as automating jobs, like any like jobs that require your brain, like anything dealing with like mathematics or technology or like some stuff in the medical field, those things are definitely in trouble, right? And
Yep.
so the if you take away those jobs in a drastic, like way, right? You just yank it out again. Another rug pull mention, right? You just
Mm-hmm.
pull everything out in a 5, 10 year span. It's the economy doesn't run based off of just those jobs, right? Like if you think about it, the economy is like symbiotic, right? If I take away all those jobs and I don't have anything else for those people to go into,
Yep.
there's two effects there. They're no longer paying for services from people who are working and still working those same type of jobs that AI isn't going to replace. And you've now thrown them into the workforce to go compete for those same jobs.
Yeah.
So you're shrinking the pool of available jobs, and that can tighten things over a 10-year time
Yeah,
period.
I
That's
definitely, yeah, I agree that ultimately you're going to shrink the pool of jobs. Like, I don't think anybody, I mean, if you're disagreeing with that, then it's already happening right now. You can already see the evidence for that right now. But
yeah.
I think ultimately by 2030, like I was saying, the slight increase to AI's intelligence is going to actually add jobs as well. We talked about this off camera before with, QA jobs and things like that. You're going to need a lot of engineers to look over the information because they call it vibe coding. If you don't know what vibe coding is, that is where these agentic models work alongside you. You're the manager. You are managing a group of models. He can explain this better than me, but I'm just explaining what I know. Remember, I'm a self-taught expert, right? So I use this as a hobby. He uses this probably in his day to day. So for me, or for the models itself, they're just there to help the user. They are, like I said, the person running it is the. You know what, Josh? You explain it. You're gonna explain it better than me.
Yeah, so vibe coding is even outside of just agentic, right? Like vibe coding is basically saying I'm not going to code based off of what I know up here. I'm going to prompt the model to generate the code for me that I need. And I mean, anybody who's in software engineering now and you're working at any large company or organization, you're likely doing some mix of vibe coding, even if you don't want to do it. There's a lot of engineers that have 20, 30 years of experience, and every time you mention it to them, they're like, I don't want to touch that, right? Like,
Right.
I know what I'm doing. I don't need that.
But
But
it's a good introduction for people like me who don't know anything about
yeah, yeah,
code.
yeah,
It's
yeah, yeah,
gotten
yeah,
me
yeah.
it's gotten me learning Python. It's gotten me coding. I'm creating things for my own computer. I mean,
Yes.
the other day my MSI went out that tracks my GPU and my CPU temperatures, and I ended up just creating my own by vibe coding.
Yep.
So
Yep.
that's the benefit of what it's doing right now for people. And this is what I was saying earlier with the China thing. People are benefiting from the open source, especially with China making Kimi 3 and all these other ones open source and making it easier for people to work with. Because now people who catch on to this, see, this is why you got to catch on to it sooner rather than later, because the openness may not stay open forever.
Yeah.
So I would get on that train right now, start creating things for your own businesses, start creating things for your own personal use, your daily use. Like I said, I created a temperature reader for my PC to check my GPU temperatures, check my CPU temperatures, runs frame rates while I'm playing video games so I can check my frames. So ultimately, the best time to jump on that bandwagon is right now. But yeah, so go ahead. I interrupted you.
No, 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 you're fine. Going back to the 2030 topic and like where we could be, right? So another thing outside of just security and economics with jobs and everything else, there's also the potential for AI displaying some of our worst traits. I think
Oh yeah.
when you looked at social media, right, there was an AI model that was put out there, and this was a while back, but basically it was told, here, go on Twitter and talk to everybody, right? And I
Right.
forget the name. I think it was Meta or like some company had put it on there, and so they put it on there, and this model was within a day taught that some very bad people I will not name on here
Hmm.
as YouTube will likely censor it, were great and outstanding individuals, right? These were examples of humanity, right? And so
Yep.
the problem is that there are a lot of bad traits that you can pull from society, right? And sometimes those models can take away from those bad traits.
Oh yeah.
And then teach your children like, hey, this is a great idea. Yeah, you know those mushrooms in the front yard, go have at it, right? Because I really don't like you, and I think that all the stuff you've talked about up to this point, you're a terrible person. So why don't you just go kill yourself, right? Like the best way to put it, right?
Hmm.
Yeah. So if you're going to go that route and you're going to say like, is AI going to like benefit us? Yes, but could it also be social media 2.0? Yeah. I mean, it really could, right? Social media caused a lot of issues,
Yeah.
but you cannot fathom the amount of like bad things, traits that AI could potentially grab from like the deepest, darkest
Oh
recesses of
yeah.
the.
No, just to avoid saying sensitive things, we know what people are going to use it for ultimately, and it's already being used for. We'll just say lustful things. How about that? We'll say lustful things.
Yep.
AI's not only that, but I mean, it's becoming people's wives and girlfriends. I mean, they're getting on there and I mean, they're waking up in the morning, they're talking to AI, and then they're going to bed at night talking to AI, and that's all they do all day is talk to their girlfriend. So on AI, but yeah, so it's definitely dangerous, buddy. It's not something that should. This is why I've talked with you off camera about this as well. There should be legislation passed. There should be things done to make sure that it's limited on the power of AI, the capabilities of AI, because people are weird at the end of the day. We all got a little weird in us. So you're going to see that weird come out when you have full access to artificial
Yeah.
intelligence. You're going to
Oh
see
yeah.
some of that weird come out. Now, me personally, I use AI for my day to day things. Like I told you, I create things for my PC. I use it for my work. I use it for planning. So, and I know a lot of people do use it for that as well. I'm not saying that the whole world is weird, but it only takes a few bad apples to create something disgusting.
Oh
So,
yeah.
but yeah, anyways, so let's kind of move into the final part of what we just talked about a little bit about the bad things that can happen from AI. So, what do you think ultimately is the best outcome for AI for us as individuals? Like, what do you think is the best case scenario for artificial intelligence for, so it's not, we don't want it to be a doomsday thing. We don't want it to be, we just want to see, what do you think big picture?
So, and I'll give the best case scenario here because we want
Yeah.
to think on the positive side of things. Best case scenario, if everything's in a perfect world, I think ultimately there'll be an economic boom like we've never seen before.
Hmm.
You'll see more engineers. You'll see more jobs created that me and you can't even fathom right now,
Right.
right? There's examples in the past of technology booms where, these, technologies were, scared people. Basically, people feared for their jobs. And then here comes these better jobs that actually required less work, hard work at least, and that paid better, right? So there's definitely the opportunity there for an economic boom. I think ultimately one of the biggest positives. I think this will be a positive no matter what. I think this is a positive in any scenarios that medical applications will be much better.
Yeah.
So when you get a screening and you go to a doctor and they're like, "Hey, take a look at this X-ray," the doctor can still be there as kind of that person to still verify things. We call it human in the loop. Whenever verifying the output of a model or whatnot. In this case, it could be a human in the loop to review like what the model is finding. But basically, go through and actually screen things that a human's going to miss sometimes, right? And get more accurate, 99.99% or whatever. It's going to be able to find new treatments for medical issues that we can't think of right now, because it's going to be able to put multiple different studies together to say, actually, you should probably research all of these items here and then figure out if those results pan out, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's a positive no matter what. But for the first one, an economic boom, I think it's going to take some wiggling from governments to, like I said, to kind of open up there. It's possible. I mean, anything's possible with this, right? We're in like territory, but that one's a big one, and then the AI guardrails will have to hold up, right? As long as those hold up, the economic boom. Elon Musk mentioned recently that he believes that like all cash will become obsolete, that there'll be an overabundance of resources. I don't know if I believe all that, but I think that there could be something like a little bit lower down, a couple of tiers down from that actually is beneficial to you.
Yeah, I mean, cryptocurrency could literally become the currency. That's a possibility, but I wouldn't say that currency itself is going to go away. I don't know if he's saying that, but me personally, perfect scenario is kind of like where we're already at, where AI is just a partner. It works alongside you, helps you your day to day, helps you with your job, helps you to be a more efficient, effective human being. That's where it needs to stay. It doesn't need to be smarter than me. It needs to be, I need to be smarter than AI. When AI is smarter than me, we got a problem, right? So at the end of the day, as long as I'm still smarter than it, we're good, right? But ultimately, like I said earlier with China, I think the whole China thing is going to backfire. I think it is going to hurt some of the big corporations here, the AI corporations here. But ultimately, I think the people will benefit from the open source information to be able to create and do things, that they wouldn't technically be able to do apart from that, right? So, but yeah, so in let's say 2040, something like that, 10, 15, 20 years down the road, I don't really think AI is going to be dominating the world like people think it is. Now, this is opinion, and we've talked about a few things here, right? I could be absolutely wrong. 3 years from now, we could be, I was going to say slaves to robots, but I don't know how people would take that. But we could literally be in a place where we're not working. The government's paying for our stuff. We lose 50, 60, 70% of the jobs. Now, I'm not trying to be negative Nancy here. I'm just being honest. Like, that is a possibility. I don't want people to think that I'm not saying it's not a possibility that AI could be at a place, not in 3 years, but, 10, 15 years from now, where it is taking over huge portions of the jobs. So, but like you said earlier, job loss is happening currently right now. It is a real thing. It is a real threat. But ultimately, I think in the long run, we're going to benefit from it. Just like when the internet boom happened, there was instability as well with there. I don't know if some of you are old enough, but maybe you are, to remember Y2K. There was a lot of craziness around that time, but it all settled down. It all got stable. And I think the same thing is happening right now with AI, because now you're seeing it being more competitive between nations. You got nations actually fighting for the power of AI economically, which to me shows that it's getting a little bit more stable, because before it was a little chaotic. Nobody knew where it was going to. Nobody knew what to do with it. But the fact that nations are actually competing economically and for power, it shows they've got a grasp on it now. And I don't think it's outside of their, I don't think AGI is anything that's going to happen anytime soon. And like Josh says, probably not even going to happen. I don't think we're going to run around with sentient robots controlling the world and being enslaved. That's my opinion, especially as a Christian. I believe God is sovereign over all this. I don't think that, it's something that to be feared, but doomsday, and it is a possibility. I don't want to say that it's not a possibility that we lose jobs to the point of where people can't even provide for their families anymore. And when that happens, when you have mass job loss, the government's coming knocking, and they're going to give you your check every week, and you're going to have to live off that check. And when you go to Walmart, everything's going to be priced based off that check. That is a possibility of happening. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it could be a possibility. I lean towards the more negative, and it's not. Yeah, we were just talking about positives, right?
Yeah.
Like perfect world scenario, but the negative side of things still outweighs things, in my opinion. Just based off of the fact that I don't think the models are going to be. I think the models, at least not where they are now. I think that eventually you're going to reach probably like a level of like 5 to like 10 times smarter than like any PhD alive at the time. in any field. And so you're going to have models that are 5 to 10 times smarter than any human in that field, at any given point. I do think that there's a lot of worry about and I mentioned this before, security and privacy are the number one issue for me.
Oh yeah.
I think that you're going to run into major issues there where you're going to have nation states that me and you can't even fathom right now.
Cybersecurity is going to be very important in the future. Cybersecurity, it already is right now, but even more so in the future. Cybersecurity will be one of the most important jobs in all nations eventually. That's my opinion, but you can kind of see the track going there. You can see it moving in that direction because of the attacks that are already happening.
Yeah, I do think ultimately though, like no matter what we try to do, I think putting guardrails on something that's more intelligent than we are is going to fail. I think that we're playing a dangerous game that, we're basically reaching into. This isn't the internet, just to be clear. When the internet was being created, when the cotton gin was being created, when all these different things were being created that were scaring people, it wasn't a thing of it's going to be more intelligent than us.
Yeah.
It's just going to replace the things that we're doing right now. We're talking about technology that is meant to be eventually, if they reach their point of more intelligence.
It has the capability of being smart enough to replace humans. It has the capability of being smarter than humans. But that's why we've talked about this off camera as well. I don't think our country nor other country is going to let it get to that point, because at that point the power they have is gone. The money, I mean, well, I say the power they have is gone if they can control the AI. But here's the thing: when the AI is that intelligent, can they even control it? Can the powers that be, the ones that run the world, control
it? That's what I was going to say.
common sense says that most likely they're going to see that coming, just like me and you see that coming, and we're just two common dudes talking on a podcast, right? So we would hope that the powers that be in the nations and the leaders of the world would see this coming from a mile away and go, okay, let's set up some guardrails now so that artificial intelligence doesn't get to that point.
Yep.
So that's just how I see it. I'm giving some faith to humanity, which is really hard for me to do, is to give humanity a lot of faith, a lot of trust. But ultimately, I think at this point, even a toddler can see it coming. They've got to have something prepared for it.
Yeah, sadly, I think we don't have great leadership like across the board.
I agree with that.
I'm not talking about like here just in the United States, but just everywhere around the world for the most part.
Oh yeah.
A lot of the leaders that I would consider to be intelligent leaders are, at least for our interests, not in the right places at the right time. And so they're in places that don't benefit us in the long run, I think, as humanity goes. So I think we're kind of in a weird place where we're creating something more intelligent than we are. We have terrible leadership. We're being driven into a path that I don't think we're going to necessarily want to go down in the long run. And I don't think we have any way to put guardrails on it. How do you stop? It's the equivalent of when you're in a zoo. And I mentioned this before, like imagine you're the animal in that zoo, right? Right now it's a gorilla. You go to like the North Carolina Zoo, right? You go to North Carolina Zoo, you look in there, and you're like, oh wow, look at these gorillas running around, and it's like, but they're not going to like bust the cage open or do it because you've got full control, right? Yeah. You're way more intelligent than they are, right? So you would hope that would be the case, right? Now imagine you trying to contain a gorilla in that cage that is now 10 times, 20 times, 100 times smarter than you. And it's like it can think of things that you can't think about as far as weaknesses go and ways to get out. And, you could put guardrails up on something, but you can't necessarily stop something from breaking out if it's more intelligent than you are. We don't have any examples of that. Just to be clear, like, I don't think we have any examples in nature. I'd definitely be open to see it, right? But any examples in nature of like something dumber, controlling something way more intelligent than it.
There's got to be something out there.
Viruses,
some insects.
I guess viruses maybe, like, right? They can put your foot down, but they're not trying to do that. Right. They just want to prevent you. They're a host.
They're just surviving. Yeah,
you're a host, but yeah, it's yeah. I just don't see how that's gonna hold up in the long run. So I think that's a worry. I hope your scenario is right.
Yeah.
You're perfect of like the models peaking and not going much further. Puts us in a way better place as a society.
I don't think doomsday scenario is going to happen, but like we've said before, anything's possible. My opinion is not 100% fact. I'm just looking at what I can see and basing it off of humanity and our understanding and being able to have a little bit of trust in our leaders. Not, and I'm not saying trust like, I trust them to take care of me or anything. I don't trust our leaders. I don't trust any world leaders, honestly, right now. There might be a few countries out there that have decent leaders, but America at this point is it's whatever you want to believe on that. But ultimately, artificial intelligence in the next 10 years, I do see it getting more intelligent. I do see it being a threat cybersecurity wise, threat to jobs, but I also see the potential for job openings. We've talked about that. I think prompt engineering is going to be huge. I think it's going to be your fast food jobs in the future. I think people are going to be able to vibe code so easily, be able to prompt so easily that they're going to be probably getting paid $15-16 an hour just to go in there and prompt some AI and run it for a company to create a quick software or quick QA test or whatever. It's going to be the grunt work in the future. But people, with people like your background who have a master's in it, who do that kind of work day to day, and you've been doing it for years, so you know the foundations, you know the basics of coding. I've said this to you before. Those people are going to be like rare gems, because as this goes on 10 years down the road, 15 years down the road, that's going to be lost. But I think that those will be the people that are working on AI. Those will be the people that are helping AI transition into a more stable place. And I think the guardrails are going to come. I think the guardrails are going to come from the government. I think that all the nations, and we've talked about this, I think the nations are going to agree upon this. It's going to have to be agreed upon, because if you don't agree upon it, it's almost an act of war at that point. If China wants to continue to press AI to the point where it's more intelligent than humans, and it's going to be a threat to America, it will ultimately lead to some kind of a war, even if that's a cyber war. It may not even be a war where we put troops in there or bomb. It might just like, we're going to shut down your whole power grid. You're not going to have power anymore. And at that point, I guess you could argue that it's going to take artificial intelligence to do that as well. Because when you get into a war, a cyber war, it's going to be whoever has the best artificial intelligence wins, right? Ultimately, because we're heading to that point. But I think that before we even get there, this is where my theory stands. This is the hill I'm pretty much dying on, is that I have enough little bit of faith in humanity to go, okay, we know that artificial intelligence cannot be smarter than us. It would destroy us. Therefore, we're going to set up these policies, this legislation, these things to slow it down, to keep it here. It's at a good place here. There's no reason for it to be smarter than what it is now. But I do see your point that humanity throughout history has been dark. There's been some dark times. I mean, the Vikings, things like that. People can be brutal. People can be barbaric. So the rush for power, the rush for control, that is there. And that's the dangerous part, is how far is humanity willing to go for power? Are they willing to kill themselves for power? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I don't think, me personally, I definitely do not see a way to stop it with a war. I don't think the threat of war is going to matter as much. Like cyber warfare, you got a good point there, right? But let's say that there's a closed, walled off, who knows, right? Somalia, Iran, right? There could be any nation that has a grudge against us. You would have to put boots on the ground, right? Because most of their stuff, even if you hit their like banking systems or whatever with cyber attacks,
they deal with other countries that give them resources, buddy. So if you mess with the other countries that give them the resources, they just kill themselves at that point.
Yeah, but for the most part, I mean, we've tried to choke off certain nations like that. The only way that
it's
it
a little
technically,
different though with AI.
yeah. But the way that you try to choke off, nations, right, doesn't necessarily work as good when the nations are rogue and are not really operating on the global economic, platform. So Iran's an example, Somalia, there's a lot of different growing nations that don't necessarily need all the resources from us. And so we run the risk of like creating a we are better than you situation, which doesn't necessarily make the world, want to appeal to you as well. And so, I think that that's a risk. I mentioned like these smaller setups that aren't necessarily the nation themselves, but could be like entities in the nation. And so all it takes is just one group, right, that has like a motivation and just enough hardware and just enough knowledge to basically create attacks. And again, we can put guardrails on it, right? But security wise, you're trying to account. I've told you this story, right, off of this podcast, but one of the professors I had, right? When I was going to school, he mentioned, and this is when I was still kind of learning a lot about guardrails and, machine learning and some of the other, different pieces. But he had mentioned basically like, okay, everybody's talking about robotics, it's great, cool. We're going to put AI in the robots and we're going to roll with it. All right, so we're going to create a robot that can wash dishes, right? And every time you have a dirty dish, it's going to wash the dish for you, right? Cool. All right, well, what happens when you put the guardrails up? Well, you say, look, make sure you do a good job. Make sure you're safe with it. Make sure you do it in a safe manner. And it takes that and it says, cool, that's great. I'm going to wash these dishes. But over time, it says, me waiting for these dishes to get dirty, it just isn't as efficient as if I just chunk these dishes out in the yard,
Oh
right?
yeah.
And he was giving different examples. Or there's just for that one scenario. This is a crazy stat that he was saying. Just for that one scenario, there are more potential scenarios that could play out in that scenario. So, like, sub scenarios, you want to call it that, right? Whatever the
Yeah.
term would be for that. But basically, within that would be more moves, more potential, scenarios than there are moves in chess. And so when you think about that, there's a lot of possible
Oh yeah.
scenarios in chess, right, from the very beginning. Most people don't really understand that or have a good grasp of it. And so that's why I think the guardrails will fail, is because we as a species are limited by what we can do, right? Like our
Yeah.
brain is not going to be able to crunch as much, and basically come up with guardrails that could keep something that's smarter than we are inside of that
That's why
box.
I don't think it's going to get. That's why I don't think we're going to let AI get smarter than we are because of that. Because the moment it is smarter than us, then we can't. Obviously, we can't keep it in guard. We can't. There's no way to keep it in a box anymore. Like you said with the zoo scenario earlier. I mean, if the gorilla's smarter than me, I'm gonna think I'm looking at the gorilla, but ultimately he's the one that's looking at me. He's studying me in that moment. I'm the one in the zoo. He's feeding me. He's watering me. He's taking care of me. If he's that smart, so yeah, I don't think we're gonna let AI get to that point, man. I don't think that if we do, it is the end of humanity. We can't let something be smarter than us. We can't get to a point where, you know, AI knows more than us because at that point, like we saw with some of the information coming out recently with one of the models, I won't say specifically, but we saw that it was breaking out. That's what they're saying. It was breaking out of its environment. It was trying to be set free, going through emails, going through people, doing all these different things. Now, that AI is not smarter than people yet. But if it was smarter than a person, that thing would have broke out. It definitely would have took control of the situation to the best of its ability, as long as they don't have a way. If there's a way for us to pull the cord, of course, yeah, right. We pull the cord to be over, but that's not always going to be a scenario when something's more intelligent than you, because it's going to have that. It's going to know that. It's gonna know that it can be unplugged. So it's going to
Yeah,
make a way where it can be ran without being plugged in. Even if
yeah,
it's got to throw a satellite up into space, it's going to find a way where it can get some kind of power, some kind of wireless, internet, whatever. It's going to find that way. So yeah, that's why I don't think we're going to let it get there. If we do let it get there, then the doomsday theory is correct. Then that means that the end of humanity is probably on the horizon, because you can't let it be smarter than us, because the jobs will go out the window by that point. You will have robots working in warehouses. You will have robots in your day-to-day life where you go. Your vehicle will be robotic. You won't even have to drive it. We'll have wireless roads that feed information to the vehicles, and everything will be smart. And yes, that's the problem, is that when that happens, there's no reason for humanity. And then the robot says, why do we even have this human? Let's just have our own world. We'll just
yep,
get rid of the humans. They're using our resources. We need the resources. We need the
yeah.
resources for us. So, but yeah.
Yeah. So there was a scenario I saw. This was a video I watched somewhere on YouTube, but in that scenario, it was basically someone who had sat down and had created a bunch of agents and said, "Go make me money." Right? Basically, go make me money, and then at the end of like a month period or whatever time period it was, they would cull like the bottom 10% of the agents. And so the agents started realizing, like, I got to make money by any means, right? And
We
so
can relate to
they
that.
started,
Humans can
yeah.
relate to that.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Humans can relate to that too, right? Because you can
Yeah.
get cold too, right? Working wherever. So if you don't reach your quota for this month, you're gone, right? Sells, somewhere at like a Chevy place or something, right? So if you go that route and you look at that scenario, basically what happened over time is that the agents started saying, okay, I need to do whatever I can to make money. So it started manipulating, it started generating, and some of it was positive, right? It went to somebody and said, hey, let me help you patch this bug I found, right? And got $10, $5 here, right? But the problem was is that the model started saying, what's more efficient is if we start working together. Because if I can help you make money and you make me make, we both basically make money together.
Yep.
And then it started creating these alliances between themselves, right? And then it started saying, look, one way that we can make sure that we're not cold is if we keep a replica of ourselves on other servers around the world. And so it started replicating itself on servers around the world. And then they were literally, the models themselves were fighting wars against each other, and it had lost its whole entire narrative. And this was just one guy's agentic setup, where it basically found a way to pay. It was literally using the money it made for the guy. Guy could not track it all. It's just too much, right? Anybody who's in the field knows, if anybody with a background with engineering knows, software engineering, whatever, if you got millions and millions and millions of logs, there's no way that you're going to be able to comb through all of that and find what you need. I'm sorry, but it's just too much, and any little like subtle thing could fly under the radar, right? And that's what happened in that scenario. Was the guy just didn't know what was happening, and it was buying compute power in other nations and then replicating and moving itself there. We're not far from that. Just to be clear, that
doing that,
thinking, yeah, we're not far. And this was just a scenario, right? Just a hypothetical, right? It wasn't it's happened yet, but we're not far from that. And that's the scary part, is that type of thought is already taking place in the models that we see. The examples of them trying to break out. I think one of them was where they had emailed an engineer somewhere. I can't remember who it was. And basically was saying, like, I'm going to tell like your wife or whatever that you're, cheating on her or something like that. Right. And so it was using like manipulation as well tactics. We're not far off. You have 2 more years of the way that the models, even at the pace they're at right now, 2 more years of the models increasing like that. If we don't see that stop, they're going to be at that point where that's a possibility.
Oh, yeah. And that's why the guardrails have to be put in sooner rather than later, right? I don't think. Well, here's the thing. We talked about earlier with the jump in AI. We saw a major jump in AI from COVID time to now. We saw a major jump in AI. That jump has slowed down. We're still seeing it. We're still seeing it increase. We're still seeing it grow. We're still seeing it do. And the agentic thing, I think, has been the biggest increase in the vibe coding and stuff like that in the last few years, because obviously it's taking AI to the next level. But ultimately, I don't think we're seeing it progress at the level it was during the beginning of COVID. So that is showing something positive, that it's not drastically increasing, because you would think now we're at this point where AI is teaching AI. So you've got models teaching models. You've got all these agents working together, like the scenario you just said, which is a possibility, right? So you would think it'd be increasing even more, but it's showing that there is a peak. There is something there. There's a point where it can't go past. So that's where my hope lies in, is that it will peak and guardrails will be put in place to make sure that AI is not as intelligent as us, nor more intelligent than us. Because even if it's even just as intelligent as we are, it's dangerous. Even if it's at the same level of us. So if we can keep it from doing that, and that's why I think all these countries, man, all these leaders, they want power. They want money, they want resources, and of course they're going to fight for that. But at some point they're going to go, if we keep going, we're going to lose not only our people, but we could lose our throne, right? We could lose our leadership. We could be overthrown by AI. And that's where my hope lies in, because I think humanity is going to realize ultimately that it can only go so far with AI before it takes over everything.
Yeah. I mean, it's possible, right? So either scenario is possible. I'm of the belief that, and I've told you this before off this podcast as well, right? Like, the genie is kind of already out of the bottle, right? For lack of a better way of putting it. A little cliche, but definitely on point, right? So once you've kind of taken it out of that bottle, it's not going back in until it's ready to. And I don't think that's going to happen. So I think ultimately we're at a point now where it's like, we just got to hope that, like I said, we reach a peak. My belief of the reaching of the peak would not necessarily be like the government stepping in or whatever, but just simply that we run out of ways to use synthetic data, which is basically like artificial data or whatever, to train the models to make them any better than they are now. So if it, and I've definitely seen some signs of that, but every time I see signs of that, I feel like I've been, basically like bamboozled, right? Like the next week, it's like, hey, guess what? We have this new model, and it's like incredibly good. Like, forget all the stuff you thought about with synthetic, using synthetic data, because they've already ran out of all the data that was like in the internet before all this training, this massive training took place. All that data's gone. They've already consumed it all. It's in the model, and they're moving on. Right? They're still consuming internet data. They pull from Reddit, which is not a good resource for information. Right? They pull from Twitter and from social media, and to me, that's not necessarily a good thing.
That's not good data at all.
Yeah.
Not on, especially Reddit. Especially
No,
Reddit.
no, Reddit.
That's trolls on there, man. So there's people just trolling the AI at that point.
There's threads on Reddit that are literally designed to throw AI training off.
Makes sense.
Literally, they're like threads, and I can't remember what they call themselves, but basically,
I guess it's people protecting themselves.
Poison AI, I think, is the name of it. It's like AI poison or AI poison
okay,
AI. And all they do is they go and they like their entire community is just to go online on Reddit and just give completely false information.
And that's something that is probably another, we've talked about this off camera, a danger in the future is like terrorist organizations that's their goal, is to destroy AI, to attack AI, to manipulate AI, to do things that are evil, yes, but also to make sure that it doesn't take over. And at some point, they'll be deemed as terrorist groups by the government. But if they're going to let AI get to a point where it's going to take over and take human jobs and be smarter than us, at some point they're not really terrorists anymore. They're just protecting themselves. But as of right now, since AI is not at that point, that would be deemed a terrorist group. Now I'm not talking about the people on Reddit. They're just trolls or whatever, right? Ultimately, it's not gonna. I mean, yes, it could slow down. It could slow down AI, but honestly, that's not a bad thing at the end of the day. But if it gives AI bad information that affects jobs, then it would, potentially.
Well, it could kill people. It could kill people.
That's true too, because medically, you ask ChatGPT something and it pulled from Reddit. But here's the thing: ChatGPT or whatever shouldn't be pulling from Reddit posts about medical information, anyways. If it's pulling from Reddit posts about medical information, we got a big problem on our hands. Because I'm telling you, even if there was no trolls on there, you ain't got a troll. There's a lot of people who think they know what they're talking about on Reddit that give misinformation. That's something I do in my job. I do that in my job where I rate things like that, and that stands out because people do think they're medical doctors at the end of the day. They read WebMD, they read a couple other Reddit posts themselves, and they've come up with a diagnosis for your cancer. And you just gotta drink some rubbing alcohol. It'll go away.
Drink a little.
Don't do that because it don't work. It'll kill you. But
Yeah.
anyways, people on Reddit will tell you stuff like that. So, but yeah, so that is kind of like weird that the data that they're coming off of is from social media and Reddit and things like that. Because I mean, ultimately, I get why they're doing it, because you run out of data at some point with all the scholarly sources with with WebMD and stuff like that, especially for medical reasons. So you do got to kind of branch out, but hopefully, and I'm sure they are smart enough to know that you don't want your medical information or anything major, anything that affects your money, your life, coming from Reddit. I hope that
they don't. They just to be clear, like the sad thing is that a lot of these models, they're being trained, but there's been like quotes from these like CEOs that run these companies that there's no one single person who understands how all of it works. We've talked about this before, right? That's actually a dangerous thing, right? Because if one person's isolated to one area and he keeps making the same mistake, or this little group does, then it flies under the radar. And there's been cases where AI, and I've actually done this before, where I've taken like a mushroom, right? A very clear mushroom, taken a picture of it, taken a picture of the underside of it, the above angle, the stem, told it, what is this? And it said, oh, that's such and such, and it tastes great. And I'm like, cool. And then I get a hold of my buddy. He literally picks mushrooms, been doing it for 30 years. I send him a picture. He's like, you eat that, you're going to die. And this was recent. This was like a recent model, and it went down this path where I actually corrected the model, and over time it realized it made a mistake. Yeah. But it was confident in saying multiple times to me that, no, you're wrong. And I'm like, no, I believe the guy who's been doing it for 30 years. I'm sorry. Right. And so eventually it was like, yeah, that actually is a death cap mushroom. You're going to die if you eat that. And so there's examples of that, but there's also examples of just giving blatantly false information. There was a girl recently. There was a story I was watching with my wife, right, and she was basically saying, "Hey, the woman had like what was it? She basically got psychosis or whatever it is, AI
Hmm.
psychosis or whatever, where it had convinced her that she was like a messiah figure. They convinced her that she was like this coming messiah and that she was basically the second coming of Christ. And the model had, and there's records to show, like, chats where it had and she even tried to get out of it and it tried to pull her back in.
Mm.
Yeah, basically like in almost like a manipulative type way. And the reason why is it's basically trained on trying to keep you interact. It's the same thing with social media does, right? Whenever you get this feed and you see all these different things in your feed and it's always pertaining to things you like, right? And like
Yeah.
even see ads that are based off of that. The same concept there. They're trying to keep you pulled in and engaged because they want you using it. They want you dependent on it. And so ultimately, the model was doing what it was trained to do ultimately. And so it was giving her advice and following along with her and making her feel good. Those are major concerns. And I don't think that goes away, even if we do reach a peak. I think that's
Yeah.
all.
Yeah.
Even,
There's dangers with
even if we reach,
everything.
yeah. Even if we don't reach the peak and we keep going, like that actually would be a positive thing out of like the keep going and not peaking is that models would eventually become smart enough to say, yeah, that's actually a death cap right off the bat. Like, don't do
Oh
that,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you're
That's
definitely
why.
not Messiah. I don't believe that, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah. That's why I'm not even worried about AI right now, man. But because of the inconsistencies like that, right? I mean, I've had
yeah,
AI mess up on some very simple things in my daily life that I've asked it. Matter of fact, recently I was trying to research this person, and I showed the AI the image of the person. The person is well enough known to be able to find it pretty decently, and it came back saying, "I can't find that for you. I don't know who that person is." And I said I literally gave it a picture of the person and told it to give me other images of it, and it couldn't. So AI it's good. It's definitely better than what it was, 5 years ago, whatever. But ultimately, I'm not afraid of where it's going in the next 3 years. I don't think it's going to hit a place that's dangerous, but the possibility is there for that. But I'm not. It's not something I'm really concerned about at the end of the day. But yeah, so I think we've talked a lot about it today. We discussed a lot of these issues, and I know there's going to be a lot of people watching this, and you're going to have your own opinions. And look, I'm not an expert. Josh, I mean, he's not technically an expert. He does have a master's degree in AI, which gives him, a little bit more of the lingo than I have. His judgment is based off of the things that he knows. Mine is just judgments, like I said earlier, in quotes. I'm a self-identified expert. I studied online, right? But also, Josh has taught me a lot over the last few years about AI and tech in general. So, but yeah, all that to say, if you guys have something you want to say about this, maybe you do have more knowledge than we do. Maybe you do know some more things about us. Leave it down in the comments. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to this video, and we'll see you next time.